Markets Now is brought to you by the 5-year anniversary of Brevant Seeds. Here's to 5 years of not just winning, but collecting one game-changing W after another. See all of our wins at brevant.com/wins.
And welcome to Markets Now. I'm Michelle Rourke with Brad Kooima of Kooima Varilek, and we're mostly higher in the grains and trying to hold things together over in the livestock futures as well. And Brad, let's talk about cattle first off. We melted the market down Friday on President Trump's comments that he's going to do something to lower beef prices. Now he says, oh, we're going to buy Argentina beef. And so what do you think? Is the market, does it like it? What does the market think?
Well, thanks for having me on, Michelle. I guess one thing I think is that I must have one ear definitely lower than the other. Every time I do this with you, my glasses look like I've, fell off of the ladder or something. Okay, try to work through this deal. And
well, we're trying not to be cynical about it because number one, we really do not want the government in the cattle or the beef market, correct? Should we just start there?
I certainly don't, and I think most of us would agree that we certainly don't need that. We don't need the rhetoric. First of all, we don't need these blindsided comments. You remember Secretary Rollins going to the border, big deal, and we all thought, oh no, I guess they're going to open the border, and then nothing. The lack, the silence. That's what I was worried about with this last deal on Friday. I thought, well, now we'll get to Monday and there won't be any details, and then we'll probably rally because we don't know anything. But now it does seem like clearly he has mentioned Argentina. And I would say this, first of all, if it's only Argentina, Argentina is an insignificant player in the world beef market and an insignificant amount of beef. I think that wouldn't really, is that a game-changing deal? In my opinion, it is not. However, okay, yeah, if it's okay to buy beef from Argentina, what's to stop us? The next move, which I thought would be the most obvious and still do, would be to lower the tariffs on Brazil. I'm not saying I'm for or against. I'm just saying that this is potentially the ladder of bad news that we got to climb. And then what about the Mexican border, which is going to open sometime? So I fear that the long speculator, and that sure seems to be the action today, which makes sense to me. I didn't understand this interest in buying these deep deferred feeder cattle last week at all. Anybody that thinks you're going to keep this cattle crush, this feeder cattle thing way above where the fats are, either the fats are too low or the feeders are too high. And especially if they think that you're just going to blindly keep this border closed until forever, is wrong. So in my opinion, you're talking about, we don't want the government in our business, but where was everybody griping about when they put that great big extra tariff on Brazil? You only hear people when it affects their bad deal. And personally, I'm starting to feel a little bit that way about the border. I think this isn't 1966. I think there's all kinds of protocol that would allow a safe delivery of cattle through there if they would just use them. But that's a show for another day, I guess. But so I think the market's faced with this bad news potentially. What's the next bad news? And I think that's part of the problem, Michelle.
Yeah, but let's go back on the border issue because over the weekend, Secretary Rollins had put out a statement basically that it's a plan, I would say, how they're going to handle New World screwworm if we get it in the U.S. They put out a protocol. And so to me, that says they're still not anywhere close to opening this border. Isn't that kind of what that signals to you?
Yes, it does. Although I'm getting a little bit used to this mixed signal thing out of there. So what's wrong with Dectomax and ivermectin? I had a fascinating visit with an individual that used to export a lot of cattle out of one of the western states of Mexico. And I'm of the opinion that there is protocol available today that would guarantee that you wouldn't have an infected animal across the border. I would be more worried about a coyote or deer or some transmission through wild animals, and that's more realistic. Like something like that would happen. I don't know. I guess I'd like to think that if we got a sick one, let's treat it and give it Ivermec and Dectomax and cure it and get on down the road. But it's politically charged. It is it's not as the cattle business is not as transparent in Mexico as it is in the United States, and so it's complicated. But I still have the belief that when the weather gets cold, that I think there'll be enough clamor from the boys in Texas that they'll get it open.
Okay. But my question to you now is, did Friday's news about the government getting involved in trying to lower beef prices, do you think that topped the cattle market here?
I'm going to say yes on the feeders. And everybody knows I'm guessing, and I'm wrong plenty of times. Okay, I'm going to say that on the feeders. And on the fats, I'm going to reserve a little bit of judgment. I was thoroughly impressed with a major willing to stand in there yesterday, or Friday rather, right when the market was at its worst, and pay $2.40, which was $5 higher up here in the north, and a lot of it, frankly. So this fear of uncertainty that I started your show with is kind of balanced by cash is king.
Yeah, it was amazing that we totally shrugged that off on Friday, totally ignored it.
Completely, really amazing. And that, one of the things that I wondered was going to happen with this chunk of news was whether we were going to fix the basis, right? That was one of the weird things about the last week or two of trade. I thought, all of a sudden now the long speculator decides he wants to build a premium in for the first time in a year. Now we're going to put a premium in the Ak cattle and the Beast cattle, even had a premium in the feeder cattle futures to the index. So that's the first thing that happened here. We flattened that right out, right? And 10 deliveries might have helped sponsor that a little bit, but that's a much healthier market. Whether you're bullish or bearish, I think we'd all prefer that you have that discount structure or not have a premium structure to incentivize people to feed the cattle bigger. But that's the first step. So if this cash market continues to perform, and let's be honest, I mean, there's no way you're going to all of a sudden a whole lot more fat cattle next week or next month. I mean, the die is cast for Texas for a while here, even if the border opens next week. So you're still going to have a shortage of live cattle, but it is supply and demand. Yeah, that's what I thought too before we had this Argentina news. And demand is a little queasy here, right? I mean, we've cut the kill way back, started cutting the kill in April, really cut the kill the last 3 months, and the boxes are still $50-$60 off the high. So we need to see that holiday buying come, but that usually isn't until Thanksgiving or a little bit after. So we got a little while here to tread water, I'm afraid.
Yeah. And let's also point out the fact that Friday's volatility, the limit down moves in the feeders, was largely a result of algorithm traders that get a hold of these headlines and then just push the market. And at these levels, you're going to have a lot of this volatility, aren't you?
I'm afraid. Get used to it, folks. Fasten up, put your seatbelt on. I've got all these stupid little sayings stuck up around my desk here. Some are better than others. But one that is, I think, still pretty real is up on the stairs, down on the elevator. That's a little imposing, intimidating, right? As fast as we went up, usually we go down even faster. So, yeah, use some risk management.
Sure.
Puts are not a bad deal here. I know they sound high, but we are very high. Let's use our head. Let's not have any bunch of casualties here like you did when corn went to $8.
Absolutely. Okay, the hog market, 2-month lows on Friday. That market has gotten beat up technically. And do you think we're close to finding support or a bottom there or not?
You can use a little China news, right?
Yeah.
The beans are getting it a little bit, but that's for later. Average weights are more than 5 pounds over a year ago on the hogs. Whoops. It feels like the supply of hogs is actually building again. We feel like the availability of feeder pigs would tell us that maybe the fourth quarter numbers are even more burdensome. We are oversold. Okay. I always hesitate because when the only thing you have positive to say about a market that it's oversold, you don't have a lot of positive things to say about it, but we are, we're way down there. Stochastics. Maybe we could get a bounce. There's a gap above us here. I've been watching Feb hogs just because I'm a kind of a first quarter bear, but keep an eye on the 86.5 level on the Feb hogs. If we get back there, I'd probably be watching it pretty close. So in other words, I'm bearish, but we are oversold, making baby get a bounce.
Yeah. And we have a big discount here with futures to cash. So let's see if that catches. What about the grains? You mentioned it. Soybeans getting a boost here last week and this morning from talk that China, maybe a deal we're going to work out here. At least the president is going to meet with President Xi by the end of the month, and he's going to have them buy soybeans. But are we getting too optimistic again?
Well, hope springs eternal over there with that deal. And I don't know. I think I mentioned it to you a couple of times here before. We're struggling a little bit with anything really great to say about the beans. But on the other hand, is that what's left to talk about in terms of bearish, right? I mean, we haven't sold a bean to China for a year. So any kind of movement that direction is going to be a little bit helpful. I keep falling back on, maybe this is oversimplistic, but I keep falling back on the deal that, they haven't bought any pork from us. I think it's because their pork industry has rebounded. They're through their cycle of poor production because of health. And now they're probably into a cycle of better than average production. They certainly have expanded. Well, that means they do need to buy feed at some point. And Brazil can't furnish that 12 months a year. So I guess whether or not it's a Trump thing or whether it's just a natural need for them to finally buy some from somebody, I guess I got a feeling that maybe I like the way the chart looks here. We broke out of that last little, sideways deal. So hopefully we can hold together here. And I would feel a little bit, actually a hair more confident on the corn. It's just that they're boring. Yeah. The corn, it takes a lot to get them to rally 20 cents. But
we had higher weekly closes in both corn and soybeans. So technically we actually look pretty constructive, don't we?
Grind in and out. Absolutely. Well said. I think we looked at I even like kind of a quasi head and shoulders bottom on some of the corn charts. So we've got a formation that looks all right. Now we just need to get up and get out of here, which in this time of the month might be a little bit difficult this time of year, but this is the time of year when lows are made.
Okay. Thanks so much. Fred Kooima with Kooima Varilek. That is Markets Now.
You were right.
You were right.
You were right.
Well, you were right. When you choose your seed brand, there's winning, and then there's...
You were right. Should have gone with Brevant seeds.
When you choose Brevant seeds, you don't just win. You get to be right. Don't just win. Win. Talk with your retailer or visit Brevant.com/win to get started.